The palace doors may look silent from the outside, but behind them, one alleged memo has triggered a storm that royal watchers cannot ignore. According to explosive claims circulating around the monarchy, a private discussion may have taken place about modernizing the future of the crown language that sounds harmless at first, until people began asking one terrifying question: was this really about reform? Or was it about reducing Prince William's power before he ever reached the throne? And the most shocking part is not even the memo itself. It is the name now being pulled into the center of the drama, Princess Anne. Because Anne is not the kind of royal who chases headlines. She is not known for emotional interviews, dramatic leaks, or public attacks. For decades, she has been seen as one of the hardest working, most disciplined, most loyal figures in the royal family. So when whispers began suggesting that Anne had become deeply concerned about what was happening behind palace walls, the reaction was immediate. If Princess Anne was worried, then something serious had to be going on. Before we go deeper, subscribe to the channel for more royal updates, because this story is moving fast, and every new detail makes the situation even more intense. Now let's be clear from the start. There is no verified public document proving that Queen Camilla or her camp created a formal plan to bypass Prince William. The palace has not confirmed such a memo, and legally, the line of succession cannot simply be changed by private palace politics. But that is exactly why this story has gripped so many people. Because even if no one can secretly erase William from the line of succession, influence can still be shifted. Visibility can be reduced, access can be controlled, public perception can be shaped. And in royal life, sometimes power is not taken in one dramatic move. Sometimes it is weakened quietly, step by step. That is where Princess Anne allegedly enters the picture. Reports and royal commentary suggest that Anne began noticing a change in the atmosphere around the king. Conversations that once included trusted family members allegedly became smaller, tighter, and more controlled. Advisors shifted. Access changed. Familiar voices were no longer always in the room. And for someone like Anne, who has spent her entire life inside the machinery of the monarchy, those subtle changes would not feel random. Anne knows how the crown works. She knows the difference between normal palace restructuring and something that feels politically loaded. She also knows what Queen Elizabeth II spent her life protecting: continuity, duty, and the future of the institution. So when language like modernization, streamlining, and reallocation of royal duties allegedly began appearing in private conversations, the concern was not just about titles. It was about direction. Who was being elevated? Who was being sidelined? And why did Prince William's role suddenly feel less secure in the emotional center of the monarchy? William is not just another senior royal. He is the heir. He represents the next chapter of the crown. He also carries the emotional legacy of Princess Diana, a legacy that still holds enormous power with the public. For millions of people, William is not simply King Charles's son. He is the bridge between the monarchy's painful past and its uncertain future. That makes any alleged attempt to reduce his presence feel explosive, even if it is dressed up in soft language and polished palace phrasing. And that is why the rumored memo became such a powerful symbol. According to the claims, the document did not say something obvious like remove William. It allegedly used safer words that sound professional, almost boring. Reconsider ceremonial balance. Modernize representational duties. Refresh the public-facing structure of the monarchy. But royal watchers quickly pointed out that language like this can carry hidden meaning. Because if William's public duties were reduced, if his influence was softened, if his image was carefully managed away from the center, the result would not need to be official removal. It would still change the balance of power. That is the part that makes the story feel so unsettling. A monarchy does not only survive through law, it survives through public belief. If the public believes William is the natural future of the crown, then his position becomes emotionally powerful long before he becomes king. But if that belief is weakened, if attention is redirected, if doubts are planted, if his circle is isolated, then the future can be reshaped without a single official announcement. For Anne, that possibility would have been deeply personal. She watched her mother give her entire life to the throne. She watched the monarchy survive scandal, grief, divorce, public anger, and historic change. And through it all, Anne remained steady. She did the work. She avoided drama. She protected the institution even when the institution was under fire. So if Anne truly believed that something inside the palace was threatening William's future, her silence would not be loyalty anymore. It would be surrender. That is why the alleged leak hit so hard. Not because Anne gave a dramatic speech, not because she staged a public confrontation, but because the suggestion that she had privately raised concerns was enough to send shockwaves through royal circles. Anne does not need theatrics to be taken seriously. Her reputation does the speaking for her. When she moves, people notice. When she breaks from silence, people listen. And then there is Queen Camilla. Camilla's rise has always been one of the most complicated stories in modern royal history. For years, she stood in the shadow of Diana's memory. Public opinion was not always kind to her. Many people saw her as the woman connected to one of the most painful chapters in Charles and Diana's marriage. But over time, Camilla rebuilt her image. Slowly, carefully, she became more visible, more accepted, and eventually stood beside Charles at the coronation. But acceptance does not erase history. For William, Diana's memory is not a public relations issue. It is his mother. And that emotional truth has always made the relationship between William and Camilla sensitive. Even when public appearances looked calm, many royal observers believed there were wounds beneath the surface that never fully healed. So when rumors began suggesting that Camilla's influence around the king had grown stronger, people connected it to a much larger story, the old pain of Diana, the future of William, and the question of who truly guides Charles behind closed doors. That does not mean every claim is true, but it explains why the rumors spread so quickly. Because the public already understands the emotional triangle: Charles, Camilla, and Diana's sons. Any story involving William's future and Camilla's influence immediately touches a nerve that has existed for decades. As King Charles has faced the heavy burden of reign, Camilla has naturally become one of the closest people around him. That is expected. She is his wife and queen. But critics argue that influence can become something more powerful when the monarch is under pressure, dealing with health concerns, public expectation, and family tension. In that kind of environment, the people closest to the king can shape what he sees, what he hears, and who gets access to him. That is where the alleged concern becomes serious. Because if certain voices are filtered out, if William's allies are kept at a distance, if Anne's concerns are dismissed as old-fashioned loyalty, then the palace can begin to fracture without the public seeing the full picture. On the outside, everything looks ceremonial. Smiles, carriages, balcony appearances, carefully worded statements. But inside, the fight is not about jewels or titles. It is about control of the monarchy's future. And according to the most dramatic claims, Anne may have seen enough to believe that silence was no longer an option. Imagine what that would mean for her. To challenge this kind of situation would not be easy. Anne would not only be questioning advisors. She would be stepping into the most dangerous territory in royal life: family loyalty versus constitutional duty. On one side is her brother, the king. On the other side is William, the heir, and the future of everything Queen Elizabeth spent 70 years protecting. That is not a normal family disagreement. That is the kind of choice that can split a dynasty. And perhaps that is why King Charles's silence has become one of the loudest parts of the story. When rumors like this explode, people expect a denial. They expect clarity. They expect the palace to step forward and shut the door before speculation becomes wildfire. But silence creates space. And in that space, the public begins asking questions. If the claims are false, why not say so clearly? If there was no memo, why not deny it directly? If William's position is fully protected, why does the mood around the palace feel so tense? Of course, royal silence has always been part of palace strategy. The monarchy often survives by not responding to every allegation. But this time, the silence feels different to many observers because the subject is not a tabloid romance or a minor staff dispute. It is the future of the crown. And when the future of the crown is questioned, silence does not always look dignified. Sometimes it looks like panic. The most emotional part of this story is William himself. Because if these claims have any truth behind them, then this is not just politics. It is betrayal. William has spent years preparing for a role he never chose but cannot escape. He has carried the weight of his mother's legacy, his father's reign, his own family's future, and the expectations of a country watching his every move. To even imagine people inside the palace discussing ways to reduce his path would be devastating. That these accusations are unfair, exaggerated, and rooted in old public suspicion. They might say modernization is necessary. They might say the monarchy cannot survive by repeating the past. They might say Anne represents an older generation resisting change, while Camilla understands how the crown must adapt in a modern media world. And that is what makes the conflict so gripping. Both sides can claim they are protecting the monarchy. One side says the crown needs reform to survive. The other says reform becomes dangerous when it starts weakening the rightful heir. One side calls it modernization. The other hears manipulation. One side sees strategy. The other sees a quiet attack on William's future. But there is one fact that cuts through the noise. Prince William remains first in line. The line of succession is not a palace suggestion. It is not a private preference. It is shaped by law and history. No memo, no advisor, no media campaign can simply erase that. But power is not always about legal position. Sometimes it is about who controls the story before the law ever matters. That is why this alleged crisis has become so emotional for royal watchers, because people are not only asking, can William be bypassed? Legally, that is not simple. They are asking, could William be weakened? Could his public role be reduced? Could his image be damaged? Could his allies be pushed away? Could the monarchy slowly shift around him while pretending nothing has changed? And that is the fear at the heart of this entire story. If Princess Anne has truly raised alarms, then she may not be fighting a legal battle. She may be fighting a perception battle, a battle over who the public trusts, a battle over whether Queen Elizabeth's legacy continues through stability and duty, or whether palace influence quietly rewrites the emotional future of the crown. The palace may stay silent. Camilla's supporters may dismiss the claims. Charles may avoid confrontation. William may choose caution. But Anne, according to these reports, has reached a point where caution feels dangerous. Because once trust inside the monarchy begins to collapse, no crown, no ceremony, and no balcony appearance can fully repair it. And now the question is no longer whether the rumors are dramatic. The question is why they feel believable to so many people. Maybe it is because the public remembers Diana. Maybe it is because William represents the future people already emotionally invested in. Maybe it is because Anne has spent her life earning a reputation that makes even a whisper from her side feel heavier than a statement from anyone else. Whatever the reason, this story has struck a nerve the palace cannot easily control, because at the center of it is a terrifying possibility, not that William could be legally erased overnight, but that the institution around him could become so politically managed, so internally divided, and so emotionally cold that the future king finds himself fighting for space inside his own family. And if that is even close to true, then Princess Anne's alleged stand is not just family loyalty. It is a warning that the monarchy's greatest threat may not be protesters outside the gates, critics in the press, or scandals from the past. The greatest threat may be the quiet decisions made behind closed doors, where polished language hides painful motives, and where the future of the crown can be shaped before the public even realizes a battle has begun. So now all eyes turn back to the palace. Will Charles speak? Will William respond? Will Anne stay silent, or will she force the truth into the open? And will Camilla's influence be questioned more directly than ever before? One thing is certain: the monarchy can survive rumors. It can survive criticism. It can even survive scandal. But it cannot survive forever if the public begins to believe that the heir to the throne is being quietly undermined from within. Because when trust breaks inside a royal family, the damage does not stay behind palace walls. It reaches the country, it reaches the Commonwealth, and eventually it reaches the throne itself. Now tell us in the comments, do you believe Princess Anne is protecting William's future, or is this just another royal rumor being pushed too far? Subscribe for more royal updates, and keep watching, because the next move from the palace could change everything.